Most problems in the garden can be traced back to incorrect watering. Today's video is all about learning the correct principles so that you can water your garden efficiently and effectively for the best health of your plants. We're also going to talk about a few of my favorite ways to water different parts of my garden. But if we haven't met before, my name's Angela from Growing in the Garden, and I love to share garden inspiration and helpful tips so you can be successful in your own garden. One of the most important principles for correct watering is to actually be in the garden while the garden's getting watered. Spend some time in your garden every day. Whether you have an automatic watering system or your watering system is you walking around with a garden hose, it's important that you are paying attention to your plants and paying attention to the watering system as it runs. This is the best way to see if there are problems with either a leak somewhere or a faulty timer or a dead battery. That way you can spot problems with your watering system before the health of your plants are affected and get that watering fixed and dialed in right away. The next principle is to pay attention to the weather. Of course, you know to turn off your watering system if we get a nice deep rain. Your plants will be happier and healthier with rain. But it's also important to pay attention to other types of weather as well. Dry, windy weather is extremely hard on plants and it's very drying. Your plants will need more water during very dry, windy conditions than they will during other times of the year. During the summer, in very hot areas like the low desert of Arizona, my raised beds may need watered as often as every other day or even every day. Containers often need watered every day. During other times of the year, those same things may only need watered about once a week. The same goes for plants in your landscape and yard. They are going to need more frequent watering depending on what the weather is like. The next principle is to pay attention to your plants. Plants can talk to you and tell you when they need water or when they're getting too much water. Learn to recognize the signs of overwatering and learn to recognize the signs of underwatering in plants. Plants may not use words to talk to you, but they're trying to tell you what they need and how you can help them. This next principle is often overlooked, but it's important to water your plants deeply each time you water. This takes a little bit of work to determine exactly how deep the water is going when you water. Shallow, infrequent watering that does not really penetrate and go deep is detrimental for your plants. It gives them just enough water to survive, but not enough to encourage those roots to go nice and deep. Then, when temperatures heat up, those roots are close to the surface and easily damaged. Use a soil probe, which is any kind of a long metal object, to check how deeply you're watering. You don't have to do this each time, but do this a few times to determine how long you need to water your plants. Different plants have different watering depth requirements. If the probe moves easily through the soil, it's moist. If not, the soil is dry. Let the top inch or so of soil dry out before you water again. Here in the low desert, we get a lot of salt buildup, so it's especially important to occasionally, like maybe once or twice a year, water extra deep, maybe run things twice as long to flush those accumulated salts that are just at that level that you water at deeper down into the soil, because that salt in the root zone is very damaging for plants. Another principle is to water at the correct time. Plants absorb moisture more effectively in the morning. Watering early in the day hydrates plants before the daytime heat. Morning waterings also help prevent waterborne diseases and pests that can occur if you water at night. I also like to add mulch to my garden to help prevent moisture loss. So you add 2 or 3 inch layer of mulch to your containers, to your raised beds, to your in-ground beds, and that helps keep the moisture that is in the soil in the soil. Another thing to understand is that some type of automatic watering system is best. Plants do best with regular water, and as much as we would like to be completely consistent every day, it's pretty much impossible. So adding some sort of automatic watering system to your raised beds and to your in-ground beds helps you and helps the plants. When those roots have access to regular water, the plant is going to be much healthier. Inconsistent watering causes seeds and seedlings to dry out, and it stresses mature plants. Plants that are stressed are more inviting to pests and diseases. It's also very important to put the water where the plants need it, in the soil. Water on leaves often causes problems with different diseases. What I found here in the low desert is our water is very hard, and soaker hoses often get clogged and don't last very long, and the heat tends to burn them up. Using sprinklers gets water on the leaves, which is damaging for the plants. Drip irrigation puts the water right where it is needed at the root zone, and it's really easy to regulate the amount of water that each plant receives depending on the type of emitter used. So let's talk first about raised beds. I love gardening in raised beds. They are a simple and effective way to garden and grow a large amount of food in a small amount of space. My favorite way to water raised beds are with the drip irrigation watering grids from Garden in Minutes. One of the things I like the best about the garden grids is the even watering. They water very efficiently and very effectively in a short amount of time. It's also really easy to connect this watering system to an automatic timer. The grids come pre-assembled and are super easy to install. The garden grid also divides your bed up into squares. That was what first attracted me to the garden grids when I saw them years ago, was the grid for square foot gardening. I love square foot gardening, and combining the grid with a watering system is absolutely the way to go. I got my first garden grid, I think about 4 years ago, and I've slowly added them to all of my raised beds. You don't have to have garden grids, but some sort of drip irrigation is best in your garden bed. You can use poly tubing along the top and then run spaghetti line with inline drips. There are several other options for watering your raised bed. Whatever system you use, pay attention how long it takes to penetrate the entire depth of your raised beds. You want those roots to grow nice and deep. That is how long you will run your system. What will change is the amount of time between waterings. During warmer parts of the year, you will water your beds more often. During cooler times of the year, you'll water your beds less often. For in-ground plants and beds, poly tubing with drip emitters or flood emitters are best. It isn't always possible, but if you can, it's best to have all of your trees on the same zone. That way you can run your system how long and how often is best for trees. Then it's best to have a system simply for your other landscape plants. Those will probably need to run for less time, but possibly a little bit more often. If it's not possible to have your trees and shrubs on different zones, then you're going to have to kind of meet somewhere in the middle and find a happy medium. Online, Water Use It Wisely is an excellent resource. It has good guidelines for where to begin with how often and how long to water your plants. The same principles apply when you're watering containers as when you're watering your raised beds. If you have a drip line in the area where your containers are, you can run a drip line up through one of the holes in the bottom of the container. Make sure that you're not plugging the other holes, and have that spaghetti line come up to the top of that container and water that container. When you're watering your containers, the same principles apply. Don't water shallowly the top of the container. Water that container completely and fully until water begins to drain out of that container. That will wet all of those roots and make sure you have nice, healthy roots in that container as well. I've found that it isn't always possible to have drip lines for my containers. My favorite way to water containers is by using oyas. Oyas are terracotta pots that you bury in your garden or container and fill up with water. The porous nature of the terracotta allows the water inside to seep out slowly to water plants at the roots. Plants in containers dry out more quickly than plants in the ground or even in raised beds. So you're going to have to really keep a close eye on your containers, especially during the hottest months of the year. Adding something like an oya to your container is super helpful because it gives you another water source that your plants can draw upon. So it's important when you add an oya to add it at the time of planting if possible, and then also use the right size oya or oyas for that particular size container. If you live where there are cold winters, you will need to dig up your oyas and bring them inside during the coldest months of the year. During the hottest months of the year, you may have to water your containers every day, even if they have an oya. The last thing you need for watering is some type of hose. I think I have tried every hose that's on the market. I've tried the cheap ones, I've tried the expensive ones. I have struggled and struggled to find the best hose that doesn't kink, that isn't difficult to use. You need a hose to provide extra water when you're planting seeds or for extra deep watering for trees. I recently added a hose watering system from HoseLink. I was a little bit skeptical because I don't always believe the hype with new products. So I have been using this in my garden for the last couple of months. The installation was a little bit tricky. I don't have any wood posts that I can install it to. I had to install it into a block wall. So I had to call in the big guns. I had to call my brother to come over and help me figure out the best way to install this HoseLink system, which he did. So that would be the trickiest part of using this system. Here are a few things that I've really liked. Number one, it's really long. When I pull it out, I can walk the entire length of my garden, and I have yet to have that hose kink. The other thing I really like about it is how easily it goes back into the container. You just give it a little bit of a tug, and then the hose winds itself really easily. Goes right back into the container. Whatever hose you use, you may not need a really long hose if your garden is smaller, but you will need some kind of garden hose. The shower attachment sprays that water out without displacing the dirt, which is really important when you're trying to germinate seeds. I often get asked, how much do you water? How often do you water? And it's a really hard question to answer, actually impossible for me to answer that question and have it be the right answer for someone else. The amount of time that you water and how much you water and how often you water is really dependent on a lot of different things. Those things include the type of soil that you have, the type of watering system you have, and the time of year. So it's important to understand the principles that we've talked about so you can apply them and determine how often and how long to water your own garden. There's no one-size-fits-all answer for how much you should water your garden. These are the methods and products that have worked for me as I am trying to water my garden efficiently and effectively. Let me know in the comments if you have other ideas or other things that have worked for you. I would love to hear your ideas. Hopefully this video has given you a basic understanding of general watering principles and also given you some ideas for ways that you can water your own garden so we can use this valuable resource in the best way possible. Thank you so much for watching.